Hello 3D students, let's talk about constructing with slabs. Your lesson objectives are to demonstrate the ability to roll out slabs of clay and cut them to a specific size and shape using paper templates, and using beveling and scoring and slipping to attach two slabs together to form a corner. So what is a slab? It's literally a flat piece of clay. Think of a pancake. It's just flat. So these are some examples. When you roll out that piece of clay, it looks like this, and from this slab you can cut it out and use it for many different types of forms. You can use it to construct boxes and vases, cylinders, cubes, anything that you really need a geometric form. If you want to create organic forms, those are better using pinch and coils. So thing is, when you work with slabs, you have to think about the moisture level or the moisture content, right? Do you want soft slabs or harder slabs? So depending on that moisture level, your slab will be very soft or rather stiff. So softer slabs, those are great for forming organic forms or works that require a mold. For example, this bowl right here, that was created using a soft slab because it creates this impression of this lace material, as well as someone manipulated the edges, right, to create this effect. So softer slabs definitely have moisture, which allows one to bend and alter the slab. Now sometimes we want our slabs to be a bit more stiff or hard, and this is better in order to create boxes and geometric shaped containers, tiles, houses, and other geometric pieces, such as these vases or geometric jugs, right? These are easier when the slabs are stiff because they're more firm, they're not going to bend and fall over. Stiff slabs have less moisture. Of course there is moisture, right? There's moisture in the clay up until we fire it in the kiln. But when the slabs are stiff, they have enough moisture where we can still attach them together. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate how to complete the slab corner exercise. What you're going to need are the following items. You're going to need the 3x3 paper template. It's going to look like this. You're going to need clay, so see me for clay. You'll need a rolling pin, and you're going to have to share these. You'll need 2 wooden slats. You'll need a fettling knife because you'll be cutting out clay. You'll need your pottery toolkit, as well as a slip and paintbrush. So let's first start how to roll a slab. So you're going to receive some clay from me, and we're not going to fire this, so you don't have to worry about wedging it. But when you receive the clay, you're going to need to flatten it down first with your hand. Once you're done wedging clay and you're ready to roll a slab, don't just have that block of clay and then start rolling with the rolling pin, because you're going to have an awkward time trying to roll it. So you really need to flatten it first with your hand. Please do not flatten it with the rolling pin. That is annoying. But what you can do is flatten it using the thicker part of your palm, just to get it as flat as possible. You can also just take the clay and squeeze it out. This just gives it a good start when you start actually rolling the slabs. Now what you'll do is you'll place your slab on your clay on your workspace. You'll have your 2 wooden slats. The point of these wooden slats is they help maintain a certain thickness of your slab. For example, this is 1/4 inch thick. And the trick of using these is you're going to place the clay between these 2 slats, because when you roll the rolling pin on top, it will not go thinner than the thickness, right? The thickness of these slats stops the clay from getting any thinner, because if we just roll this out by hand and we don't have these slats, we don't know how thick our clay is, and then we're going to run into trouble. So I'm going to roll it out, but as you're rolling it, notice how I am kind of flipping it in different directions, because I want to get it to roll out wide enough, and at some point this will become the same thickness as the wooden slats. Now, why do we use these wooden slats? The thing about using slabs is we want to have uniform thickness. So for our projects, we should have about 1/4 inch thick. If your slab is too thick or too thin, they end up drying unevenly and the walls can crack. They won't explode, but they'll crack and you'll have structural issues. When you need to create these geometric forms, you want stiff slabs, so they should be leather hard. Now, how do you make them leather hard? So use 2 sheets of newspaper to help them dry more quickly. Because right now it's very soft. It's very flexible. Too flexible, right? I don't need it to be this flexible. So what I can do is I can place it between 2 pieces of newspaper, and I will have newspaper in the classroom. And you just put the whole slab between 2 sheets, 1 sheet and a second sheet. And over time, the moisture that's in the clay starts to become absorbed by the newspaper, which means at some point you can remove the newspaper, toss out the newspaper. You might have to get more newspaper at some point as well. You can see the paper's already starting to become a little saturated. So you do need to switch out the newspaper once in a while. So something to point out though, do not leave your slabs stored in the newspaper. If you do, if you put your artwork away this way, the newspaper will eventually absorb all of the moisture from your clay. It'll probably dry out. It'll be firmer than you need it to be. Make sure you take your rubber rib and use it to smooth out your slabs. Very important. You can do this before you put it in the newspaper, or you can do it after you use the newspaper to dry out the slabs. But really important that we flip it over, use both sides, smooth out both sides using a rubber rib, because when we roll out our slabs, it tends to pick up any textures that are underneath that we might not want at that moment. Now, my slab is kind of firm at this point. You can always ask me to check your slab if you want to know, is it firm? But what you're going to do next is take the 3x3 inch template, and we're going to use this to cut out 2 slabs. A couple things though. I've seen students take the template and they trace it right in the middle. They cut it out right in the middle of the slab. Why is this a bad idea? Well, it's a poor use of all the space around it, right? Why are you going to cut this piece out and then have to stop, wedge the clay, re-roll a slab, and then do it again, right? So smarter idea is to cut it out in 2 different spots. So I'm going to lay the template on the slab, and I'm just going to hold it down. I'm going to cut using the fettling knife. And you should keep your hand and your knife steady, because we don't want to make a poorly cut slab. This is why we're using the templates. Any extra clay you have, just hold on to it. Don't get rid of it. What you can do, if you want to make sure that the sides are actually straight, is you can actually tap it on the table to kind of bring those corners back. But if you cut them correctly, you should have 2 3x3 slabs. But now we need to actually create a corner. Something to think about though. Do you want to bevel them or not bevel them? So what is beveling? Beveling is where you cut the edge of the slab so it makes it easier to put them together. The thing about working with slabs is we want to have 90-degree corners, 90-degree angles. This makes the construction easier, also as a sign of good craftsmanship. So when you put them together, in terms of beveling, the corners and the seams become easier to hide. So the side of the slab, this part, when we cut it beveled, it looks like this. If we do not bevel it, it looks like that. So how do we bevel it? What you do is you can take one side of it, take your fettling knife, and you're just going to cut a little angle here, because you're literally going to cut off that angle. And you can always take the other side and just to cut the opposite angle, just so you know which way to go. This often helps me. All right, here we are at a different angle. So what I like to do, the easiest way to cut the bevel from your slab is to actually cut it along the edge of the table. That's why I have the edge of my table here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my fettling knife and cut it right at an angle. Now it's okay if you don't slice all the way through in one go. And I'm going to continue cutting at an angle. Try your best with this. When we construct them, we're going to have the corners actually meet up. So again, cutting right at an angle. If the clay falls on the floor, please pick it up. Right, I have beveled both corners of my slab, both sides. Scored it because we're going to now attach it together. So I already scored it using my needle tool, and I'm going to grab some slip here and place it together. But we're not done, okay? Because the problem is this slab, this corner, is still not very steady. What we need to add is a reinforcement coil. Reinforcement coil, what is it? It's a coil added to the interior corner or where 2 seams of the slabs appear to meet together. So what literally is a coil. Make sure it's small, keep it thin, don't use a thick coil. If you use a thick coil, it's more work for you. Reinforcement coils, they just help reinforce the joints. They make those corners more stable. So I've attached this together, but now I'm going to include the reinforcement coil. So I'm going to go ahead and score the coil and I'm going to score the interior right between where these two corners meet. Put some slip, and I'm going to put this in here. And then the next step is actually smoothing this coil into the corner. This is why we want our clay to be somewhat plastic. It's easier to smooth. You can use your finger, you can use a tool, but make sure it's completely smoothed out. The next step is actually cleaning up the corners, the exterior corners, and the top and bottom. Don't forget, look at both sides as well as the corner. What's going on here? Right here I can see some of the slip and the score marks. So a trick you can do to make these corners more 90 degrees, again, we want our corners to be 90 degrees because that's good craftsmanship, it looks more stable, is you take your rubber rib and you can actually like shave off the corners a little bit. But again, just give some, give some attention to the corners because you're gonna have to do that with your slab project. So here's one I made earlier. So I'm gonna rip it apart. This is your mastery check. I'm gonna rip it apart, and it's resisting as I'm pulling, and I can see where I had scored. I can see the remnants of the reinforcement coil.